Okay, good afternoon. My name is Ani Pagosian, and I am the Economic Development Coordinator here at the City of Glendale. Thank you all for joining us for our virtual Tech on Tap event, Lessons Learned Abroad and What U.S. Startups Need to Know, featuring international entrepreneur Maggie Shih. Today, you will hear from Maggie Shih, who is a technology veteran as a co-founder, executive, advisor, and product leader. Maggie has over 20 years of software and mobile product development and business management experiences with companies ranging from startups to multi-billion-dollar companies. Maggie's prior experience includes serving as a co-founder of a venture-backed mobile SaaS company, Embrace.io, VP of Product Management and Technical Services team at Datapop, Chief Operating Officer and VP of Product at RSS Graffiti, and a product lead at Overture. We encourage you all to ask questions in our Q&A chat box after each presentation. Maggie, take it away.
Thank you. You actually did a way better job than me introducing myself, so thanks for doing that. Hi, everyone. I hope this presentation will be super helpful in some ways in your US company, startups, or perhaps the job that you are a part of. So before I start, I want to quickly ask you guys, I just want to know the audience in the group. And before you answer, I'm going to try to have you guys use this tool, Poll Anywhere. And I believe it's active right now. So I'd love to hear from you guys just to have a better understanding of what kind of role do you play. I know most of us probably wear multiple hats. So I'll pause for a little bit here. Okay, employee, yep, that's very common. I have definitely been part of a startup and also in corporate marketing, yeah. It's a big one. Entrepreneur, yep. Students, that's interesting. I'm actually teaching at Loyola Marymount computer science department, so been working a lot with a lot of students. Okay, I also see in chat versus the Poll Anywhere, I see IT manager, entrepreneur mentor, someone would like to start a business someday. Okay, yeah, that's super helpful. Okay, cool. Yeah, this will help me because that gives me a little bit of information. And oh, I see tech delivery advisor to African startups. Very interesting. Love to talk to you more about it if you're interested. And employee transfer to entrepreneurs. That's a very common process. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next thing. I want to give you guys a little quick background. I don't want to repeat what Ani just mentioned, but what I do want to call out is that just like you guys, I also have experience with different backgrounds and obviously wearing multiple hats. And most recent startup that I co-founded Embrace, that's also in LA. So I'm mostly in LA. So definitely very familiar with the Silicon Beach tech experience here. Now in 2018 and plus, I basically decided to take a sabbatical. I know someone asked me one time, why did I then end up doing it? It's very simple. Sometimes you just have something on your bucket list and you just have to do it because if you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so I actually took time off, went to a continent that I used to not know anything about or did not know much about. And I went to Zambia. And it's really just to sort of pay it forward, work on some for-profit social impact or business for good type businesses. But little did I know that I actually learned a lot from that experience and from people in Zambia than I ever expected. In fact, in the end, what really came out of that wasn't actually starting another opportunity there. We actually decided with my co-founder in Zambia, we decided to start the first Zambian Business Angels Network, which is very, it was a long time, 1 year, 2 years process to actually get that going. 2020, I don't think I have to repeat exactly what happened in 2020, but I want to say that, you know, one of the things that was not expected while I was in Zambia was I was there going back and forth between US and Zambia, and eventually I went back to Zambia after my, you know, Christmas vacation. In 10 days, my friend who's from the US CDC located in Zambia basically called me and said, go book a flight, you got to go back home. And so it was a very crazy time, not gonna lie, that a lot of flights were canceled. So I had to somehow figure out how to get back home. And luckily, you know, having families at home, basically figuring out getting I wanna call it a 5-star like hotel RV, and basically quarantine myself for 2 weeks before fully immersed back into the US. But that's definitely part of the challenges that I will also talk about, how I actually end up using that opportunity to really deliver or produce some of the activities that we did in Zambia. Okay, I have another question for you guys, and this will also do the Poll Anywhere. When you think of Africa, what comes to mind? And just pause for a sec. I am going to give you guys, I'm doing this myself here, that's why. Oh, wrong one, sorry. There you go. Okay, same thing. So when you think of Africa, what comes to mind? There's no wrong answer, by the way. I can guarantee you that probably anything you say is actually true. It's just a matter of how bad or how good. Greenery, yes, absolutely. Animals, I love that. Safari Wild, yes, if you ever go to Africa, you cannot miss that. And if you can do backpacking along with it or pay a lot of money to do the luxury safari, go for it. It's totally worth it. Mystery, yeah. The Big Five, yes, the Big Five giraffes. I love giraffes. I have a bunch of those pictures. You guys are so nice, but it's all about the forest, the animals, the wildlife, and that's actually all true. And I want to actually share with you guys. Oh, there's also, okay, there it goes. I want to see this coming up. So poverty, yes, that's also a known thing. Okay, Safari, I will just let you guys keep going because if I see anything interesting, we can talk about later. But let me share with you about some of the things that we may not be aware of, besides war, famine, poverty, animals, safari, all that stuff. So you guys know that a lot of times we actually call Africa as if it's a country, but it's not. It has a lot of countries within Africa. And in fact, it's so big that if you can see just the way how they actually compare with the rest of the world here. Next thing is like a lot of things that you guys actually called out: opportunities, resources, war, dictatorship, poverty, giraffes, animals, they're all true. And in fact, back in the days, it was also considered almost a lost cause until a very specific technology that came out that really revolutionized the entire continent, and that's the mobile technology. It basically jumpstart because of the lack of infrastructure, and mobile did not need that as much. So other things I want to share with you guys about that you may or may not know, actually there's a lot of activities going on in Africa. In fact, there's about over 635 million now, because it's 218 fundraised. This is only tech startup in Africa. There's also a lot of African Angels Network happening. We're actually partnering with one of them, ABAN. And just the tech hubs alone, there's actually more now, but there's about 618 of them around the continent. And if you actually look at 2019 and 2020, this by the sector and by country, these are the number of different startups in different sectors that have raised over $500,000 of funding. And if you guys should see Zambia, because this is where I actually ended up going, you see these empty column. This is actually a good thing because usually for investors and angels, they usually are looking for the next upcoming opportunity. So a lot of them actually consider South Africa a little bit saturated. And so they're actually looking for other ones. So this is actually a good thing. Okay, let's talk quickly about Zambia. And maybe you know where it is, maybe you don't. I'll just assume not because I didn't before. It is actually a landlocked country. It's surrounded by many other countries such as South Africa. And I'll give you a few fun facts. It actually has 72 languages. Some of the local Zambians would joke around with me because I sometimes ask them, so why are Zambians so peaceful? And they'll say, well, it's because we have too many languages, so we can never actually start a fight. Because by the time they have a fight, there's already a breakup because there's no team that can actually collectively collaborate in an effective way. So perhaps that's why when Nelson Mandela, when he was released during the struggle against apartheid, he actually had to reinstate and start his political party headquartered in Zambia and now South Africa, because at the time, just like Switzerland, it was actually considered a neutral state in African continent. Another fun fact, perhaps you guys knew this or not, it is actually the first country that was able to certify organic and fair trade honey in the world. And the reason behind this is because they have over 60% of woodlands and very, very little population. So that's like basically paradise for bees. And if you guys like Black Panthers, Zambians love to brag about this because some of the waterfall scenes that you have seen is actually filmed at Victoria Falls, or there's a lot of CGI, but it's all inspired by Victoria Falls. And they love to brag about it because Victoria Falls is actually connected by multiple countries such as Zimbabwe, but the one that was filmed and inspired by is on the Zambia side. So you might actually hear that sometimes. And then if you love active activities like water sports and stuff, you have to go to Zambia because it is by far the best, one of the best water rafting experiences you'll ever actually have. And this is not debatable, by the way. Pretty much anybody who's done water rafting would tell you this. Okay, but here's the thing. It is also, if you look at this entire world map, and this is actually a poverty map, if you see anything red, it means bad. It also, if you look at the entire map, Africa is still by far one of the most problematic when it comes to poverty. And so if you look at Zambia, 59% of the populations are actually living in extreme poverty. They're making less than $2 a day. So here's what I'm going to talk about, a couple of things I learned, what that actually means. So remember I actually talked about the time that I went through 2020 with COVID, right? How do you turn our uncertainties into opportunities? So here's the thing about startups, what I love about this type of environment. If you look at a lot of examples that I just put on here, including one of the companies that actually I consider that my best education ever, my whole entire life, Overture, they actually came up with the idea of sponsor search or paid search that even Google had to pay patent for them to be able to display the paid search results into their website. And a lot of these companies, if you see their industry that they're part of, you would probably originally would say, it's saturated, right? Entertainment industry, it's a monopoly or oligopoly back in the days. Taxi, unions, a lot of things, hard to actually restart a company. Yellow Pages. For those that are younger, you may not even know what Yellow Pages is, but Yellow Pages did exist. It's a book, right? A booklet of all the local businesses around your area. Even products like Google Docs. That's where the mainstream of collaborations actually happened. Or One of the most favorite products that we have still by far is the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. And a lot of these companies, they all had to do disruption of the industry. And a lot of times it came from an environment of uncertainties, a lot of risk, a lot of questions. And so if you actually look at Zambia, it's not so funny, but it is, sometimes I laugh at this because people are complaining about masks or sanitizers sometimes. You know, I've been carrying sanitizers for 4 years now because since 2018, when I was in Zambia, they had a cholera outbreak. And 2019, imagine I am in the tech industry and here I am dealing with 8 to 12 hours daily outages every day in Zambia because of the lack of rainfall. And their only major electrical production is through their one biggest dam in Zambia. And so, and then 2020, we don't even need to talk about COVID hit, and we were working remote. I had to fly back. So time difference and working with different people in different countries, even locally in Zambia, imagine they still had outages that we had to deal with. But these challenges actually produce a lot of output for me during the last 2020 specifically. So one of the things that actually came about was knowing that the environment has a lot of challenges, but there's also, it means that there's a lot of opportunities. And what I mean by that is, for example, this one particular example I gave is that when we were actually looking in Zambia, we're looking at, okay, well, there's no electricity. Forget about the city, the rural areas, and it could be just 30 miles away. We have the same problem. Then there's actually a lot of people who are living under poverty, extreme poverty. They have a lot of land. What are we going to do with that? And what we have discovered is that nobody is looking at how to actually leverage their empty land. In fact, there's a lot of NGOs going there trying to empower these people by giving them to just to grow things, and through grant they'll pay them through grant just to buy their products. And a lot of times those are not sustainable because they don't actually have a demand or a market. But what we've discovered is that actually in Zambia, essential oils is one of the most easiest thing to grow over there. In fact, they have done research that there are more products that can grow there than a lot of countries that we all assumed because of land and climate. And so that was like one of the first projects we ended up deciding trying and just to see, and I was able to get a US partner to work with us on this. The other thing I want to share with you, I'll talk a little bit more about that essential oil because it has other challenges as well. The other thing I talked about was that Angels Network. So no matter how much I want to try there to start any businesses, what I realized is that, first of all, I can't speak 72 languages. I barely speak English sometimes. And their English is different than my English, you know, and on top of that, we're talking about local cultures, differences, behaviors, trust. There's so many things. And most importantly, they have a lot of young people because of the population. And so when we looked at this, I said, why am I starting one? Why am I actually not working with them? And so my co-founder, who's Zambian, he actually was also the one who influenced and started the Zambian stock market exchange. We all realized, look, if we were going to help the economy and actually do something a lot more effective, we got to just figure out how to delegate, how to empower people versus us doing it ourselves, because I only have two hands and it's just me. And so this is how we ended up realizing that, look, let's start something that can help the entrepreneurs there. And what we discovered is, geez, there's actually a lot of very talented people there. In fact, I have to say, because of the job opportunity there is a lot more competitive, they are way smarter and way more efficient and way more productive and smarter than I am. And then there's these influencers and high value individuals. They actually want to put money, because I think we don't realize one thing, again, lack of investments over there is actually opportunities over there. They have money that they don't know where to invest. They can't invest locally. They don't exist. There's not a very solid startup ecosystem there. And yes, they can invest, internationally, US and things, but then when it comes to middle class people who are bankers and maybe working for companies, that's expensive to invest internationally. And so a lot of times what they end up doing, just like a lot of us that's right in front of us, sometimes they just buy land and the land is empty and it's not being used and that money is not necessarily being productive. So we found out that there's actually a bunch of them want to put money in. They want to be able to start or help some businesses because they can't start businesses, but they can actually invest. So we kind of came up with the opportunity of let's go ahead and start an Angels Business Network because of lack of investments over there. Let me share with you about the second learning that I have. I think that we tend to rely a lot on data. And it's I'm not saying it's not important, it's actually really important. But what sometimes we miss out is why the data is showing what it's showing. And a lot of times the data is only showing half of the story or maybe one perspective. And we don't really know other perspectives or other scenarios or behaviors that can influence the behaviors of your customers or behaviors of your partners or even the environment that they live in. We actually need to know why. I'll give you one example. Okay. Remember I talked about how there's lack of infrastructure in Africa. And when mobile hit, all of a sudden everything happens because even farmers in rural areas that have no electricity, they can charge their phone with solar panel, very cheap solar panel. And so if you have 50% of mobile users in Africa, you would probably think, oh, I can actually start businesses with mobile apps. Let me just build a bunch of mobile apps because they can actually start using it. But what you don't realize, this is true data, but we don't realize is what kind of mobile phones are they using? What if it's not smartphone? What if they don't have mobile data? Because it's expensive. And so a lot of times that we don't realize that this data looks like a lot of opportunities, but it's a lot more complicated than that. And I'll give you an example of that one. So what I actually noticed when I was in Zambia, I was always wondering, gosh, why are there so many money, what do you call it? Mobile money booths. You see the picture that I put on there. This is just one of the pictures I took. And they're everywhere. They're right next to each other, competing with one another. And here's what's interesting about this. They're actually using a technology called USSD. The cool thing about that is it's any mobile phone can actually leverage this communication tool at very, very low cost. So pretty much anybody can use it with very little cost because they just have to pay not a data plan, but a call plan. And why is that? Why does that matter? So imagine you are a manager of a farm or you're an owner of a farmland and you actually have farmers in rural areas actually planting crops for you. Well, you can't be paying them. Well, you have to pay them every week because they need that money because it's their money for the day, really, right? They can't wait for a month. So you have to actually somehow figure out how to pay them. They don't have a bank. You can't just transfer money to them that way because it's expensive and they don't have access to bank offices because they're expensive to even have offices. So what happened is that a lot of landowners, they actually have to pay them through mobile money. And so with the rural farmers, what they'll do is they'll wait for the land manager, or sorry, the landowner, go to a booth, put the money down, tell them what phone to use or what phone to send this money to. Then they'll send a code to the farmer and they can have the oldest phone possible as long as it's through USSD, and they get a code and then go to their nearest phone mobile money booth in their rural area to collect the money. And this actually really revolutionized a lot of activities from a financial standpoint, because now I don't care if you have a lot of money, because disparity between the poor and rich is really, really wide over there. And you can't be making sure that everybody has a smartphone, and they also cannot have basically call time all the time, right? So this really, really cut down a lot of what I called challenges or even roadblocks for them. And infrastructure doesn't even really matter anymore in this case. In fact, I actually met a student I mentored at the time. She pretty much started a mobile money booth on her own with very little money because she came from a very poor family, and supported herself through the entire college years, and also supporting her entire family, and bought a house for them. And that's the kind of micro entrepreneurship that they have over there because they have to. And also it's very low cost entry. Another scenario I want to share with you is this Uber challenge, the market challenge. I know that you guys probably have heard that Uber has tried to saturate or try to expand in other markets, especially developing countries, and they haven't really been super successful. Now, I can't speak for other markets, but I can explain to you in Zambia why it didn't work. And they're still trying right now. And I believe there's a rumor that they are secretly trying and testing out the market. Don't quote me on that, but I've been hearing that from a lot of people there. But when they first started, they did not realize one thing. They were all about data. They know data, okay? But maybe they didn't realize how big of an influence some of the actual secondary data and other behaviors could change the way how they can run the business or operate in Zambia. Maybe you guys have heard of a secondhand market. They call it Salalua. So that particular market, if you look at Africa, I don't know if you guys realize this, 70% of our donated garments, they all go to Africa. And the secondhand market is basically their outlet mall. In fact, I can actually buy, I have seen this because they actually have like very expensive brand like Tommy Bahamas or Gucci, brand new for like 10 bucks there, brand new. And because someone donated them, right? And it ended up in Africa. And this is like where normal people go shopping for sure. And then the second thing is it's a landlocked country. So what that means is that everything that goes through in order to get to Zambia requires passing through multiple countries before it gets to Zambia. So the operating costs and a lot of different costs becomes a lot more expensive. So what that means is that, Uber has some requirements. One example, car requirements. How old can that car be? And then they also have a driver requirements. Do you have car insurance and things like that? And that just basically did not fly in Zambia because second market is so big, the disparity is so wide. It's a landlocked country. So buying brand new car is basically not a taxi driver car. They would never use a brand new car to be a taxi driver. They can't even afford it. So pretty much all their cars did not pass the requirements that Uber had at the time. And so they couldn't really launch because of that. Now, what's interesting is that there is a local company called MyGlendale actually was able to completely change that. They understood the differences. And so they're able to launch that market within their own country successfully. And I believe it's 2016 or 2017. I don't know exactly the year. All right, the third learnings I got, and you guys are probably so sick of hearing this word product market fit. It's every book, every speaker will talk about it. Now, it is really important. You do have to care about your product. You do have to care about the market. They do have to match. But what I actually learned is that it's not enough to just have product market fit. The who and how, which means the people and the process that you are working with, dealing with, collaborating with, are just as important. And I'm not talking about customers in this case. A lot of times I'm talking about the partners you work with, the employees that you actually partner with. They actually matter a lot. I'll give you a story about Zipline. This is a California company, Northern California. It's a startup. And what's interesting is they know there is a need. This is a very, very, drones is everywhere. How are we actually going to use drone effectively? In fact, early 2020, they were able to deliver medical supplies using their Zipline drone to deliver in North Carolina successfully. But what's interesting about it is they did not start their process they did not actually start this entire business, even though the headquarters is in California. They actually started and successfully scaled in Africa. And the way how they did it was that they realized that a lot of hospitals can't reach rural areas in Africa, lack of infrastructure and the cost. And even if they do have clinics in rural areas, they don't have the technology, the equipment to be able to store stuff like blood, because it requires refrigerations and different specific requirements. So how do you actually save lives when they're in rural areas? And by the time they get to the hospital in the city, it's already too late. In fact, my co-founder's dad passed away that way because they were living in other provinces and couldn't get to the hospital in time. So Zipline, they know that there's product and they do have the market because it's there. They know the global market needs. But what they ended up doing is, let me go to another place, another country that has the right partner that can work with us to figure out how to scale this. And so they became the first national drone delivery program at scale in the world back in 2016. I'll talk about essential oils because that is something that always dear to my heart, because that was one of the research projects that we tried to learn about Zambia. Same thing, the demand is there. We have very low risk, and I'll explain that a little bit later, and the viability of the country. It's very easy to grow what we need to grow over there. If you guys think about essential oils, for those that may not be as familiar, whatever you eat, whatever you use like shampoo, soap, perfume, makeup, and possibly in medicine. Actually, there's a lot of medical, and I'm not talking about herbs. We actually do use some essential oils products for medicine. The market is huge. It's there. It's not something you have to question. In fact, for Zambia, because they don't produce enough products over there, they import a lot of things. So just essential oils alone, there's about $53 million opportunity there. In terms of risk, when someone asks us, whoa, if you're starting a company or a project in a very high risk country, isn't that really high risk? Absolutely. But also at the same time, for us, we didn't have a lot of risk. And I'll tell you why. First, we didn't spend a single dime to start this company. We didn't have to. We just had to spend time. And I'll share that a little bit later. But the risk is also low because we have partners that really, really want to expand and really want to go after this project or this product, but they don't know where to go. And so this US partner that we have, which works with Lush, and they're actually talking to Whole Foods. The only problem is they don't produce enough. That's why they're going for other markets. They're trying to find partners locally to be able to work with them. They're happy to train. They even done the research for us. I didn't have to spend a single dime to figure out what product to actually plant there. So they signed a contract. They're willing to have guaranteed price for all the farmers that can produce. So the risk is really low for us as entrepreneurs, startup owners, because we didn't have to spend any money to invest in this. And the viability, like I said, it's already there. So, but this is still not good enough, right? The product market fit is there, but it's not good enough because we actually started off with the wrong partners. Not the US buyer. The US buyer is all about social impact. They want to be able to reach out to farmers, rural areas to empower them. And it's actually absolutely essential. The problem, what we discovered when we talked to them is, so how much have you guys succeeded in this area? They spent 4 years and barely producing anything to deliver in Zambia. So what we actually discovered while we're talking to a lot of friends in Zambia is that a lot of middle-class people, because again, remember I said that they have money, they don't know where to invest that money, so they buy land. And when they buy land, they don't know what to do with that land because they are not managing it, because they have their own daytime job. And the farm might be 2 hours away, 3 hours away, possibly even 8 hours away. And so they've been trying to look for something to produce. But essential oil makes so much more money than growing potatoes or tomatoes. And so when we talk to the farmers, just rural areas farmers, well, we have discovered a couple things. One is that they are very used to a lot of NGOs and foreigners coming to them and say, hey, grow something brand new, we're going to pay. Don't worry about your food, we're going to pay you. Okay, and this is a unintentional consequences from NGOs. They meant well, but a lot of times what happened is sometimes the grant dries up, or they didn't fall through because, like Brexit, for example, there's an impact on UK aid that they could take a lot of money away because they're now refocusing on COVID, or sometimes they just have bad NGOs. And so when they promise the farmers and say, we'll come back in a year, because farming takes a year, right? Come back in a year, whatever you produce, we'll pay for it. Well, it might work for the first year because they had grant money to pay. Well, what happened the second year, third year, and fourth year? It died. Then you have other issues like bad NGOs. They have their own agenda and they're telling you something and they don't show up. And so a lot of farmers actually are used to that and they get scared. And imagine that they're extreme poverty, right? Making $2 a day. So they can barely think about, they can't think about next day. They have to think about how am I going to put food, on the table for my family today? And so if you are telling them, hey, this is the land that you have, because it's all manual, right? It's their labor, their hands. Grow something else. Don't grow something that you can eat. Don't grow corn. Go grow essential oils. They're going to starve because they don't know if that money is going to come through. And so this is one of the reasons why it didn't work out. It was so hard. It took them 4 years. And then on top of it, they don't have money. So the US partner that we partner with have been sending them seeds for free that they can grow. So we talked to a lot of our friends in Zambia who are middle class, bankers or working for corporate companies that have land. When they found that this is an opportunity, they're all asking, like, can we sign up? Can we sign up? Don't worry about the money. We can pay for the seeds. You just have to train us. We'll hire people for you guys. And all of a sudden, not only we're able to meet the social impact interests, because they're the one who's actually hiring these farmers, these local people. We don't have to worry about. I don't even have to worry about how to manage them. They're the one who's taking care of it, taking everything, every risk that we originally have a startup. They all got delegated to these landowners. So all of a sudden that we just have to worry about how to onboard these managers, these landowners, and making sure that they can actually process the essential oils. These are the people that we ended up working with. So another thing is infrastructure. A lot of times that we have talked to and done research on this. In fact, it actually proven working because our US partner does have a partnership with a really, really big commercial farmers in Zambia producing essential oils. But what we cannot do is the distillery minimum is $50,000, just minimum. And imagine you built a big old distillery and the only way that your crops will get there is somebody has to transport the crop. And before it turns into essential oil, as you guys can imagine, like lemongrass or lavender, I mean, they're heavy once you start collecting them compared to converting to essential oil that could be, put in a briefcase. And so it got very costly if you actually do that. So what we also learned about process is when we onboard these landowners, we also have to figure out because their land is everywhere. So we have to actually figure out how to actually help them to successfully distill the oil. So we have a local partner, which also were local Zambians, basically came up with these drums. Instead of $50,000, it's costing between $150 to $300 to build this. And all they have to, it's like Legos. They basically just put this together, put it on the truck, go to another farm, stay there for a week, and there's no electricity required because it's all firewood. And they can basically distill for that farm. And then they go to the next one, and they go to the next one. And so what I want to really give you guys the summary at the end of the day is that a lot of things that we think are very clear in front of our eyes, we actually don't necessarily know for sure. Like, first of all, risks to us, changes to us, uncertainties to us may feel like glasses half empty. But I would really relook at that and say, well, startups, when they disrupt an industry, it's because they're able to see something that is not half empty, but half full. Another thing that I mentioned was there's more than just data. The data that we actually see a lot of times is not the complete set of information. In fact, there might be other information or other industry data versus the data you're looking at that can actually give you some hints or directions in terms of what might influence your consumers or your product because of their behaviors in other industries can replicate in the industry that you're in. The thirdly that I mentioned about the people and process is that, yes, product market fit matters, but if you don't have the right partner, the right employees that you're working with, and you don't have the process in place, it's really, really, really difficult to scale. And the sustainability is not there. So you might actually be okay in the beginning, but you're going to basically flop very quickly after that. So that's all I have. I hope that is somewhat useful, entertaining, helpful. Happy to answer any questions you guys have.
This is Nick. I have a quick question. Is Zambia politically stable?
Yes, it's actually considered one of the more stable countries in Africa.
I see. I think, you know, I'm from China. You know, when China was starting like taking the, you know, the open the door, you know, like 45 years ago, it's very similar to, it's not very similar, but similar to the environment Zambia has. So I have that, you know, people can just, you know, register, get a motorcycle and start business. So I'm not sure. So, but Zambia, you know, for me, I think the better solution is if you really want to build like a hardware, some kind of infrastructure to do business, it's kind of hard because you need a lot of management. You need to know the local, whatever, you know, the local people, you know, over there. You need the connections, obvious, and the plus they're landlocked. So it's kind of hard. So I think that I feel like the best, portable solution, suitable solution is just grow the essential oil, whatever the vegetarian is, pack them, you know, pack them and ship it out. So don't do any like a distiller or something, you know, over there. So that may be, you know, pretty maybe simpler, you know, that's what I feel. So, but
if I understand, if I understand correctly, so I will tell you the distillery is all built locally. We actually didn't have to import, and I'll give you a little bit of actual history behind why importing some of the product into Zambia is actually can be very expensive. But I think a short story is that yes, if you can import some of those stuff, it's great because we can actually look into that. But also at the same time, a lot of these things can, because of the technology we have nowadays and the different opportunities, there's a lot of design that we have all seen is all designed for first world or Western countries. They're actually not designed in a different environment. And so the distillery that we actually talked about doesn't require an engineer to actually build that. Anybody who maintains a car knows how to do that. Anybody who actually knows how to cook pizza on a wood fire can actually build that thing. And so that's the kind of thing that usually we don't think about. We think about how to build the most scalable, biggest product that you can, you know, consume a lot of productions. And you're right. There's some things that definitely needs to change. But it takes process, honestly, until that they can get to a scalable areas. We kind of have to do like a stepping stone situations. So anyway, but thank you for sharing. For China, it's that's a totally different topic that we don't even have time to discuss this, but China is very unique in its own way. And there's a lot of differences and risks and challenges Africa has. But it's just more about how much do we really understand them and how are we really maneuvering that. There's a question that I'm getting. It says, what are the similarity of challenges you see between US startups and your experience in Zambia? Yeah, so the three things I talked about, there's actually so many things, but I only picked three because I think those are probably like the biggest potentially problem that I have seen. The similarities a lot, so there's a couple. One is that we tend to look at what is in front of us, and we look at product ideas that it's kind of like when before Airbnb came out, you know, everyone was thinking hotels. Everyone was like, oh, it's saturated, or entertainment like Netflix. Like there's no like thoughts about what the potential opportunities are. So I think a lot of times we're looking at opportunities more as soon as we see challenges or risks, we kind of shy away from it versus looking at that challenges and risk and say, what is creating that challenges and risk? Why are they there? There's got to be something that is preventing from making a dent. So that definitely was one. Founders, there's actually a really good book called Founder's Dilemma, if you guys are interested. I forget the author's name, but you can actually find it in Harvard Business Review, for example, that did a summary of this book. Founders are actually by far one of the hardest thing, I think, for any startups. Because I've been through probably 5 now, and even in Zambia, people are asking me, how did you find your partner? Again, that's a very long story for a different time, but you have to find the right ones. And it's not because they're the smartest or they have the most connections. You have to be able to work with them. And that culture really, really, really matters. I have left some startups or trying to sell them to companies as soon as possible because we knew that if we don't do it soon, that company is going to implode because the culture was just not strong enough. And okay, let me see the third one. So Armand, I hope I answered your question. There's so many similarities and challenges you run into. The one thing about startups is that they're all kind of in some ways similar. It's just that the way how you execute in different markets, they have to be different. They have to be in some ways customized for that particular market. We can't do the one size fit all. It doesn't work that way. So that's why scaling is interesting, because scaling doesn't mean one size fit all. Scaling means that you can modularize the business model you have in other markets in a way that works for them. Okay, another question. Can we do this right in our backyard, like homemade essential oils? Yes, but I will tell you that you need a lot of hectares and acreage to produce one small little bottle of essential oil. Oh, and by the way, I want to share this. When we talked to our US partner, they spent 4 years to work with these farmers to acquire a certain amount of land mass. We spent 1 year, and we actually have potentially 10 times more hectare sizes than they were able to collect in 4 years. And that has to do with because the partners that we ended up finding out who we can work with. But yes, you can do that. And I want to tell you, by the way, essential oils is actually not my main business. It was actually our research project that I completely and 100% basically gave it back to all the local Zambians to operate and run. We actually started the Angels Network from all that learnings that we have. Okay. I don't know if there's any more questions. Oh, okay. Please talk about the competitors you see entering this market. Who is on the horizon? Can you explain to me when you say this market, what market are we talking about?
Yeah, this is Peter. I asked a question. Maybe it's not the market, it's the model you've used, right? So you are definitely a pioneer, but other people, like maybe some of us, were watching you, listening to you. Do you see any major NGOs or for-profits replicating what you're doing and trying to use their scale and their influence to try to exploit this situation to the detriment of the local people?
You're opening a sort of a can of worms in some case. So are they exploiting, replicating? I don't know, because I obviously did not go and talk to every single one of them to figure out what they're doing. But are they exploiting? I think just like any natural businesses and NGOs, they all have their agenda.
Yes.
And so, but based off of their agenda, they are doing things that fits their goal. And I don't care which country or which NGOs we're talking about. They all have to meet their goal. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, they do that. I'm actually not too worried about competitions. I think yes, competitions will always be there. But that's just like any other startups, right? When Airbnb started, when Netflix started, when I don't know what else that I listed example. Uber has like Lyft and a bunch of other companies. They all started. And in fact, I will tell you that most of the companies that when they started first, they're usually not the one that expanded with the best results. Facebook was not first. Uber was not first. It's just, there's so many of them. And so I think maybe first, there's a term, like being the first in the market, it's not always a good thing. So I don't know if that kind of answered your questions. I guess my point is I'm not too worried about competitors. I actually care a lot about the execution and the scale, the sustainability, which means that to me, it's the people that I actually need to work with and the process that we're actually building matters to me the most.
Thank you.
Yeah. How the transportation market at Zambia. Okay. You picked a really big one. So transportation is always going to be one of the biggest untapped opportunities in probably any developing countries that I know of. Now, for Zambia, it's absolutely there. The challenge that we run into is unfortunately, you have to rely on government roads. If they don't exist, it's hard to get there. And a lot of times that some provinces, some people, they team up within their farmlands, between farmlands, and just built their own roads. They don't even wait for the government to do it because they can't. But there's also other complexity. Transportation in general is one of the least transparent industry. If you have truckers, I don't know if you guys know any truckers in the United States. I can tell you in Zambia, truckers, they are in some way always trying to game the system in between. They will sell gasoline that is not theirs because this truck is not theirs, it's owned by a company. They'll sell gasolines in between just on random streets and say, anybody wants to buy some of my petrol that I have in my truck, like I'll sell to them, and they'll pocket that. So there's a lot of opportunities, but just like any opportunities we have, the more it's untapped, the more it has like the opportunities, but it also means it's like wild, wild west.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so the reason I'm asking is because you have all these middle class, buying the land and they want to do something, and maybe they should also have invest in one company like transportation, so they can do both. Because without that, then they are not willing to. If you make them say, hey, here's a transportation, you guys want to invest it, also invest in land and grow up the whatever the things, then they might. I don't know. I just
No, you're absolutely right. So this is why Essential Oil was a research project for us, and why we ended up launching the first Zambian Business Angels Network for a reason, because we actually prefer working with many startups there. And I will tell you that because of job opportunity challenges over there, there are so many entrepreneurs over there, and they're all very young people that we talk to. And what they actually need is not money, is actually mentorship. and connections, and there's just no ecosystem for it. And so that's why we built that. And we have all these what you call middle class educators, like people who are educated that work in all these industries, that they can actually provide that mentorship of how to scale businesses. And then we have these high value individuals that literally they have money, they just don't know what to do with that money. And they're trying to also help their own country because they don't want to keep investing international, like the US market. Just a side note, the Zambian stock market exchange that my partner started a while ago, there's only 7 to 10 companies listed on there. So you can just imagine how challenging that could be too. Okay, do the farmers and partners in Zambia consider you more as an American or as a Chinese in their dealings with you? That's a good question. I'll explain that a little later. I ask because China has significantly increased its relevance in numerous markets in Africa to mix sentiment. So I'm curious how Zambians see you. So that's a great question, by the way. They're very confused. I will tell you that. Because the thing we forget is actually Zambians, even middle-class people there, it's not easy for them to travel out. It's not because they don't have the money to travel. It's because, for example, they have to pass the visa stage. And like if they want to come to the US embassy has to approve them because they need to make sure they're going to go back to their country. And so you can just imagine, because of that, the exposures that they have is mostly through TV, right? So Hollywood, what is Hollywood showing us? And so when I showed up, of course, they hear me with an American accent, but here I am looking like Asian. So what exactly am I? And so I had to explain that. So unless they've traveled globally or they work with like global companies, which a lot of them do, especially people working in NGOs. And NGOs are a really big quote unquote industry in Africa. I'm not calling it industry because it's that big. NGO, nonprofit organizations. So they do have exposure, but it is what they see. So it does actually impact, it has some influence, but again, this depends on countries. So in Zambia, because of their personalities, they're extremely peaceful compared to a lot of other countries. They never had an independent war that a lot of other African countries had to be able to pull away from the British government. So they are very passive in some ways, and they're very, very friendly. So when you talk to them, all I had to do is speak one of their local languages, and all of a sudden they're like become their best friends. So, and I have to explain to them that no, I'm actually American. I do have, Chinese background. My parents have, Asian background, sure, but I don't know anything about China, but I know everything about America. So you can ask me about United States, but that confuses them. But it does have some sentiment here and there, but it's different. If you go to Nigeria or Kenya, they may feel differently. And I will tell you why. There, again, like I said, this is not to criticize any government or any NGOs or anything, but they all have their own agenda. They have to, the first thing they do is it going to benefit my country? Is it going to benefit my company? And so for China to be in there, they're also looking at their own country's benefits. So a lot of times that also sacrifices the interests of the local citizens, in this case, African citizens. So of course there's mixed sentiment because of that.
Thank you for answering the question.
Yeah. Where's the beer? I like to get the beer, yes. Okay, yeah, I think that's okay. So I will let Annie do the closing remarks. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Maggie. Great presentation. I know most people, if not everyone, enjoyed it as well. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you really did enjoy Maggie's presentation and her knowledge. Please do save the date for our virtual Glendale Tech Week, which will kick off with Meet the Funders on March 30th from 4 to 6 p.m. And our Pitch Fest event and keynote speaker will be held on April 29th from 12 to 3 p.m. And you can RSVP on our website at GlendaleTechWeek.com, and we have linked the link in the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly as well. And just to note, the events will be virtually as well. And stay tuned for our next Tech on Tap. An announcement will be going out in the next few weeks. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.